Good morning. This is Dylan Jovine with Behind the Markets. Happy Monday. Today's Monday, October 20th. Today, I'd like to talk about gold. Oh my goodness. Look at that metal go, right? It has actually outperformed everything. In the stock market, the biggest sector, the biggest winner this year has been utilities, 25% gain in aggregate, and then technology, 23% gain. But gold is killing them all. Gold's up even more than that. It's really up 2.5 times since October 2022. And that's really interesting because in October of 2022, we issued a report called The Death of the Dollar, which really talked about and predicted that we were watching China buying gold, hoarding massive amounts. And we postulated here Behind the Markets that China would use gold as a way to chip away at US dollar dominance. So it's interesting that we get a note out from Morgan Stanley last week. And it says there are a few reasons that gold is rising up. Here, I'm going to go through their top 3 reasons they believe gold is moving higher. 1, bubble concerns. First, it's possible that investors are buying gold as a hedge against the risk of speculative AI bubble in stocks. Doubtful. It's possible. Sure. But that gold didn't do that during the dot-com era. So it's not really there. 2, their second reason, inflation hedging. Historically, gold has helped investors preserve purchasing power during periods of inflation. So there's a possibility that investors are buying gold as an inflation hedge, especially with the full effects of higher U.S. tariffs still to be seen. There's possibility 2, which is definitely part of it. And 3, which we've talked about a lot, dollar debasement. Another hypothesis is that owning a hard asset like gold may help offset the risk of debasement or devaluing of the US dollar. This thesis suggests that several factors, mounting fears over deglobalization, high US debt and deficits, and threats to the Fed's independence have shaken investor confidence in the dollar, leading to a reduction in its use globally. Now, to their great credit, Morgan Stanley in their note says, while this thesis is compelling, it does not fully explain gold's recent rise, and they add another factor to consider. Increasingly, Global Investment Committee believes gold's rally may be linked to a global financial shift as central banks reduce their reliance on the US dollar and anticipate changes in currency markets driven by stablecoins and other digital assets. These digital currencies have the potential to disrupt traditional fiat currency markets. By using gold to back fiat currencies or cryptocurrencies, governments and entities could challenge the dominance of the US dollar in global transactions. Now, basically, so they're tiptoeing around something that Bloomberg really talked about. And Morgan Stanley has to tiptoe around this because Morgan Stanley does a lot of business in China. But an article in Bloomberg on October 9th, 2025, really gets to the heart of our thesis. It says, gold's record rally is helping China challenge Trump and the dollar. Beijing is seizing the opportunity to offer up an alternative to U.S. financial dominance. So gold is really part of China's plan, and they might back their currency with it, because the implied assumption is that their currency, the yuan, if China has a lot of gold, it accomplishes 2 things for China. Number 1, if China is promoting gold and this narrative, this story that the dollar is being debased, so gold is a better alternative, just by the very fact that they're promoting this story, it chips away at the value of the US dollar as central banks move to gold. But also, and this is the smart thing for them, it's certainly what I would be considering, with their offshore currency, I'd be seriously considering pegging their offshore Hong Kong dollar to gold. It allows China, as the article states, to offer up an alternative to U.S. financial dominance as Washington cranks up the use of sanction and alienates even longstanding trade partners. So there's this. So we've talked about here at Behind the Markets for the past couple of years that the rise in gold is very suspicious. This is something I pay close attention to. And we were watching from the gold reserve newsletters out there who was buying the gold. And it was reported that China as a central bank had become the largest buyer in gold in 2022 and 2023, we started talking about, that's when we came out with our special report, Death of the Dollar, which we're just updating now. So get yourself a copy. But basically, our thesis in Death of the Dollar was that China was backing a play to replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency using gold. And subsequently, in all the months since we issued that report, China has become and stayed the biggest buyer. It's unbelievable, really. And now there's talk that they're going to actually do their offshore currency. They're going to attach it to the price of gold, which is very interesting. Very interesting. Now, if China had a currency attached or connected to gold, do you think their currency would have a lot more likelihood of being adopted? Of course it would, because our currency and our bonds and everything that we're doing is getting debased, getting devalued, basically. You're watching the great devaluation of the US dollar. China's would be attached literally to gold. People wouldn't worry about that. So a lot of money would rush out of the United States and flock into China, which is a very big deal. Very big deal. I hope the powers that be, and again, how do I know this? I'm not a prophet. I've just studied history. This is the history of great power competition. England, actually studying England's rise relative to the Dutch Empire and their kind of monopoly on the financial industry at the time, really gave me the insight that China would be doing this. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Have a wonderful Monday. I'll see you tomorrow. So much more to unpack.